أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين مولانا وسيدنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وحملة كتاب الله. We reached a couple of weeks ago this line, and this is the third and final session on this line. It's a very, very important line. It's a very, very important part of the Ziyarat, because this one line summarizes one of the most fundamental Shia beliefs, which is that the Ahlul Bayt and the Qur'an go hand in hand and they are inseparable. This is a key, fundamental, core belief in the Shia faith. So once we agree with this, which we have discussed and proven in the past two sessions, once we agree with this, then we have some very interesting implications. And these are very, at the moment, discussions which are going on in the community, I believe. So the first implication is, if we agree that the Imams are one with the Quran, they can never be separated from the Quran, they carry and hold the knowledge of the Quran within them, then the first implication is this: Imams can have an impact upon the external reality and the world. In other words, they do have Wilayah Takwini. This is something very, very hot being discussed among certain places, and really I feel that this is something very simple to understand, inshallah. So let's try our best to explain this. So the question is, do Imams have the power and authority in the external world of creation? Do they have certain abilities given to them by God due to their closeness to Him, that they can influence this world, perform what we might call miracles, extraordinary things, all by the belief and permission of God? Is that possible? So let's discuss this. What we will say is, someone who is truly a hamalati kitabillah, a carrier of the Quran, a carrier of the book of God, becomes endowed with an immense and extraordinary power. And yes, they can have an impact upon the external world and the systems of this world. For example, the obvious example is in the Holy Quran itself, Asif ibn Barkhia. He was one of the advisors and ministers of Prophet Sulaiman, who, according to the Quran, it says he had some knowledge of the book. But with this small amount of knowledge of the book, he was able to, in the space of the blinking of the eyes, in other words, in a second or less than a second, to bring the throne of the queen of Saba or Sheba to Prophet Sulaiman. So now imagine if we were explaining this in English, we would say what? Within half a second, he was able to teleport a physical large thing like a throne from hundreds of miles away into where he was at that time? Or did it vanish over there and appear here? Did it fly through the air at the speed of light hundreds of miles and enter this place? No, it's bizarre the way that this thing happens, but the Quran says this is what happened. قَالَ الَّذِي عِنْدَهُ عِلْمٌ مِّنَ الْكِتَابِ, the one who had some knowledge of the book, علم من الكتاب, the one who had some knowledge of the book said, I will bring it to you in the twinkling of an eye. So when he saw it set near him, he said, this is by the grace of my Lord to test me if I will give thanks or be ungrateful. That is 27:40. So with some knowledge of the book, look at the words being used. Indahu ilmum min al-kitab. He had some portion of knowledge of the book, not the whole knowledge of the book. The Quran says he was able to do something like this. Now, the Quran has not mentioned his name, but it has just said that he had a quality. The quality that he had, which enabled him to do this, was to have some knowledge of the book. So there is a direct relationship between knowledge of the book and extraordinary powers to impact this world. And the more knowledge of the book a person has, the more Wilayah Takwini they will have, the more power they will have. Now let's look at another verse, 13:43. The Prophet, after trying so much to convince people and to spread Islam and to tell them the right religion, he was told, look, Now that they've refused you, when they refuse you now, you say the following: وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَسْتَ مُرْسَلًا. When the faithless say to you, you are not a prophet, قُلْ كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا. Say, look, sufficient is Allah as a witness between me and between you, and وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ ilmul kitab, and the one who possesses all the knowledge of the book, complete knowledge of the book, not like the previous verse where we were saying ilmun minal kitab, some knowledge of the book. This is all the knowledge of the book. So who is this person who has all the knowledge of the book and can act alongside Allah as the witness to the Prophet's veracity and truthfulness? Well, this has been proven in the tafsiri debates and discussions that this refers to none other than Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam and all of the Imams. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri says that the Holy Prophet said, ذَاكَ أَخِي Ali ibn Abi Talib. This refers to my brother Ali ibn Abi Talib. Let me bring a couple of ahadith for you in this regard. So these are from Imam Muhammad Baqir. He says, regarding this verse, in this verse, Allah has meant Ali ibn Abi Talib in the first instance, who is the first of us, best of us after the Holy Prophet. And then in another place, he says, نزلت في علي بعد رسول الله. This ayat was revealed in the honor of Ali alayhi salam, وفي الأئمة بعده, and in reference to all of the Imams also after Imam Ali alayhi salam. وَعَلِيٌّ إِنْدَهُ ilmul kitab. It is Ali to whom this verse refers when it says he has knowledge of the book. Then we have this interesting hadith. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was asked that, okay, here we have one verse which refers to Asif ibn Barkhia, who had some knowledge of the book, and here we have a verse which you say refers to Amirul Mu'mineen, who had all the knowledge of the book. So out of these two, who was superior in knowledge? Imam says the following: ما كان علم الذي عنده علم من الكتاب عند الذي عنده علم الكتاب إلا بقدر ما. He says, the person who had some knowledge of the book, Asif ibn Barkhia of Prophet Sulaiman, compared with the one who had all the knowledge of the book, Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, is like a mosquito which goes to the ocean and picks up some amount of water on its wing. Imagine how much water a mosquito can take on its wing if it dips itself in water. Tiny, tiny, tiny amount. In fact, you wouldn't even call it a drop. It's smaller than even a drop. And that ocean, in comparison, is the knowledge of Amirul Mu'mineen. So if we are talking about the more knowledge of the book you have, the more power you have, the more ability you have to make changes in this world, to interfere in this world, to impact this world, to disrupt the natural things in this world, then of course, here we are talking about immense, immense power of Aimma alayhimus salam. Some more ahadith. We could quote so many, but I will just maybe one or two more. In some riwayat, in some narrations, it is narrated that the Ism A'zam, which gives power itself, which gives the granting of a person's wishes, which gives, for example, the person a lot of power to do things. Ism A'zam has 73 parts. One part of those 73 parts was given to Asif ibn Barkhia. That was his position. He had 1 out of 73. Whereas we have 72 out of those 73 parts. And the final part, so total power, absolute power, is of course with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is reserved for him, it's especially for him, and no one can have an idea of that kind of power. So Allah, of course, is in his own category. But according to the creation of God, we have the Imams, more powerful in that sense than any others, because they hold all of those secrets of Allah, the power which has been given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are able to have that power. Okay. So based on this, the power of the Imams to impact and influence the normal order of things or the normal way things are done becomes clear and obvious, and these things should not be just dismissed as impossible or against intellect. Generally, people will not have an answer to these things other than to say, oh, that sounds far-fetched, or you're being extreme, or you're doing ghulu. Okay, don't just say that, bring your proof and prove it wrong. Now, there's an important point here. Why do we find then sometimes they did not admit openly that they had this kind of knowledge, or sometimes they downplayed it? Why is this? There are two reasons. Number one, because of danger. They could not sometimes, in the kind of situations they were in front of the Bani Abbas, Bani Umayyah, where their lives were in danger, where their followers' lives were in danger, they could not sometimes declare so openly these things. This is number one. Number two, sometimes maybe there wasn't danger, but the people in front of them, maybe their own Shias and their own followers, who were simple, who were not very well trained, who were not able to understand what they're trying to say. They didn't understand what the Imams were trying to say. They couldn't fathom what they were trying to say. They couldn't digest what the Imam was trying to say. Then the Imams would obviously not give them that kind of level of knowledge, which is 100% true, but they could not take it. So the Imams would downplay it. For example, what if the Imam said, yes, I have this hidden knowledge, and I have this hidden knowledge, and I can do this, and I can do that. That person, what if he then turns around and says, oh my God, you must be God himself, and they started to worship the Imams? Imams would not allow that. So in front of some people who didn't have the capacity to understand and withstand these kinds of informations, they would downplay it. They would not declare everything. So here we have a long hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, in which the Imam shows how, for example, sometimes the Ahlul Bayt downplayed their own levels of knowledge. So what happens is, Imam is with a group of people, and he makes the following statement. He says, I know what is in the heavens and I know what is in the earth. I know what is in heaven and I know what is in hell. I know what has happened in the past and what will happen in the future. Then after some time, Imam felt that no, these people that I've just made these comments to, they don't have the right kind of capacity to absorb and withstand these comments. They may misunderstand them. So then he makes the following comment. I know all of this from the book of God, because in the book of God, he himself says, Fihi tibyanu kulli shay. In this Quran is the explanation and knowledge of everything. Then Imam stands up and he leaves the gathering and he comes back after a while. What does he do during this time when he was away? Well, he begins to speak to the gathering again. He says, I'm surprised at someone who would claim that we, the Ahlul Bayt, have hidden knowledge, ilmul ghayb, whereas really only Allah has hidden knowledge. I wanted to go and find one of my maids who had hidden herself somewhere, and I was not sure which room was she in. So here, think about this. Like, Imam has just made a previous comment saying that I know what is in the heavens and the earth, I know what is in heaven and hell, I know the past and I know the future. And now he's come back and said, well, I needed to find where my Kaniz was, where my maid was. I wasn't sure which room she was in. And then he says, only Allah has hidden knowledge. So here, Imam has not done anything wrong. He's saying, I do have the knowledge of these things, but then he felt, I need to caveat this because there's some people here, either they won't understand or there may be some danger for me. So he says, I know this from the book of God. And then he clarifies further that only Allah has hidden knowledge. Of course, only Allah has hidden knowledge. Definitely, we believe that. All the Shias believe that only Allah has hidden knowledge, but then he gives it to whomever he wishes. He gives it to Imams, he gives it to the Prophets. And then Imam shows that, yes, even though I do have this hidden knowledge, I still have to use the apparent means at my disposal. I still have to live in this world like a normal person. I still have to go and look for someone. I still have to go and find someone. Again, in the same report, then we have Imam in a private conversation now with a couple of his special companions. When they asked him, oh Imam, we heard what you said about your maid and all of these things, but we really believe that you have some very fantastic and superior levels of knowledge. Imam says to them, have you come across this verse? Imam confirms that, yes, I do. But have you come across this verse? And he quotes the verse of Asif ibn Barkhia, that there was a person with some knowledge of the book, and he was able to bring the throne of the Queen of Sheba. So he says, have you come across this verse? I said, yes, I have. He said, do you know who said this and how much knowledge he had? I said, please tell me. He said he had the level of knowledge he had was like a drop compared to the ocean. How much do you think this is? I said, well, this sounds like a very small amount. He said, no, actually, it's a great amount because even though it's a drop in the ocean, it's linked with the knowledge of Allah. So even, yes, Asif ibn Barkhia, we are saying he didn't have as much knowledge as Amirul Mu'mineen, but still the amount he had, you can't say it's a small amount. He had a great amount. Then he said, have you come across this next verse? And he quotes the verse of Amirul Mu'mineen, وَمَنْ إِنْدَهُ ilmul kitab, the one who had knowledge of the whole of the book. I said, yes, I've come across it. He says, tell me, between these two verses, someone who has some knowledge and someone who has all the knowledge of the book, which is greater? I said, of course, obviously, the one who has all the knowledge of the book, his knowledge level is greater. And then Imam pointed to his blessed chest, and he said twice the following, ilmul kitabi wallahi kulluhu indana, ilmul kitabi wallahi kulluhu indana. All of the knowledge of the book, I swear by Allah, is with us. All of the knowledge of the book, I swear by Allah, is with us. So here Imam showed in this hadith that yes, sometimes he had to show and show people before they misunderstood him, before they misquoted him, before his life would be in danger. He had to show them that yes, look, even I have to deal with the apparent things, but the knowledge is here. Another question which arises, and which people really, they tend to struggle with, is people ask, what about their own destiny? What about their own future? On one hand, you're saying that they know the future, they know the past, they know so many things. Did they know their own fate, their own destiny? Did Amirul Mu'mineen, for example, know that if he goes to the masjid, he will be attacked by Ibn Muljim and die eventually? Did Imam Hussein alayhi salam know that he would be driven into Karbala and be martyred there? So if they knew these things, then why did they go? And if they didn't know, then what kind of knowledge did they have? This is one question. So let's answer this question first of all. So the answer is 100% they had knowledge of their own future and destiny. And there are three things we'll say here. The first one is this. If we refer to the statements, the will, the sayings of Imam Hussein while he was in Medina, on the route, when he met certain people, it becomes very clear that he knew what the outcome of his journey would be, because this was told to him in two ways. The first way was through, you can say, heavenly sources. Jibreel communicated it, Rasulullah communicated it, Amirul Mu'mineen, Janab Fatima, Imam Hassan, all of them had mentioned what was going to happen to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So he definitely knew. And this was from the heavenly side of the communication. This was from the, what we would call a ghaybi side, the hidden knowledge side. He was told what was going to happen. However, it doesn't mean that there's not a worldly side as well. We also see on the worldly side that it looked like he was going towards his martyrdom. All you have to do is assess the situation of the time. He was threatened. His life was in danger. He was told people are coming to kill you. He was told in Makkah that people are coming in their ihrams, they have daggers underneath and they're going to kill you. All of those worldly situations pointed to the fact that his life was in danger and he would be killed. Even other people, non-Imams, Abdullah ibn Umar, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, ibn Abbas, Farazdak, they all told Imam, our assessment of the situation is that you're going to be killed. So they all had predicted this, even though they did not have hidden knowledge. So, yes, the hidden knowledge is there. The apparent knowledge is there. Some things, the Imams had both. They had the hidden knowledge, but anyone would have seen that in the situation of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he would be going to his martyrdom and he would be killed no matter what. Second response to this question. Sometimes we see that no matter, even if you have the knowledge, one has to sacrifice everything, even one's life. People, they protest, they die. People fight, they die. People stand up for their rights and die. People make a stand against, for example, big corporations or corrupt governments or for example, against genocide, or for example, what's happening to the Palestinians, they'll take a stand and they're willing to die. They say, my life is not as important as that larger goal, so I'm willing to give my life. So Imam Hussein's stand in Karbala and decision to risk his life was like this. He had to. Islam needed his sacrifice. If not, then Islam itself would have been corrupted and destroyed. So sometimes we also have to bear this in mind, that people know what is going to happen, but they're willing to do it because for a higher goal and for a higher objective. Third part of this first question. Yes, the infallibles had hidden knowledge from God. Yes, we've already said that. But they also had to live in this world as normal people, okay? So they would have to go through life as normal people. Why? Because this world is a world of duty. They were also duty bound. They also had to perform all of the obligations that everyone else has to perform. Their duty was to go along with the normal apparent things in life. They were not obligated to use their hidden knowledge all the time. Yes, there were times when God willed and allowed them to use the hidden knowledge to perform, for example, a miracle. But this was not the norm. This was the exception. This was always dependent on God's will and permission. This was never on their own whims and desires and decisions. In any case, their will was linked with God's will, as we have previously said in other sessions. For example, let's say there's a legal case which comes. Rasulullah is the judge. The Holy Prophet is the judge. What will he do? Will he just say, okay, using my hidden knowledge, I have concluded that you are guilty and you are innocent? He never would do this. He never did this. He would say, bring your proof, bring your evidence, bring your witnesses, take an oath, you swear on the Quran, you swear on God, you swear on God. Why did he just not say, okay, look, using my hidden knowledge, I can easily conclude you're guilty and you're innocent? No, they had to use the apparent things in front of them sometimes. This was their majority of their life, was using the apparent things and being duty bound in the apparent things. So for example, here we have when the Holy Prophet would make a decision and a judgment in a legal case, he would say the following. One of you, so if there's two parties, he would say the following. You in whose favor my judgment has gone should not feel proud and should not think that just because the Prophet has ruled in my favor, that this has somehow exonerated me from everything. No, it could be that you took an oath falsely, or it could be that you lied, or it could be that the witnesses you brought lied. I'm paraphrasing here. It could be that you argued your case in a better way. It could be all of these things. But this does not take away the reality of the situation. It could be that here I have ruled in your favor because of the evidence in front of me. I have to rule on the evidence in front of me. But in the next world, if you are truly guilty, you will be punished there. Don't think that just because I've ruled in your favor here, that over there you will not be punished. So they had to rely on these things. They had to rely on the outward things, even though in their hidden knowledge, they would have known who really is truly guilty and innocent, but they were not allowed to use those things. They had to live these kinds of normal, physical, apparent lives. So in short, answering the first question, we'll say this. They were not bound to follow the hidden knowledge they had. That was not their duty. Just because they knew something did not mean they had to act on it. Now the second question. When they were confronted with dangerous situations or adversaries, why did they not use this takwini power and perform a miracle and just defeat people? Why did they bother to rally the support of people? Why did Amir al-Mu'mineen, you look in Ahlul Bayt, he gives loads of khutbahs telling people that come and fight, join the army, join me, stand against Muawiyah. Why did they bother doing this? Why did, for example, on the day of Badr, did Rasulullah just not recite a prayer? The earth would have opened up and swallowed all of the mushrikeen. On the day of Uhud, why did they suffer so many losses? Why did he just not pray a whirlwind would have come and swept away all of the disbelievers and all of the enemies of Islam? So the answer to this is, very simply, the answer to this is yes, they had the ability and power to defeat their enemies. However, it's not that simple. So the detailed answer is this. Firstly, we have to bear in mind, everything their enemies had was actually from the blessings of the imams. The life of the enemies, the hands and feet of the enemies, the ability of the enemies, even the weapons they made was all from the blessings of the imam, because everything which comes to this earth comes through the imam, as we've discussed before. So whatever powers they had, whatever abilities and life that the enemies of the imams had was from the blessings of the imams only. But again, we will say this kind of power to channel the grace of God is not something that makes them duty bound to use it or to stop it. They cannot just immediately say, okay, I want to stop the grace flowing to this person. I want to stop the grace flowing to Shimr, to Yazid, to Umar ibn Sa'ad. It doesn't work like that. They were not duty bound to do that. Whenever Allah willed, yes, they could do it. But generally they wouldn't do it because that's not the way that they were told to live in this world. Again, why? Because this world is a world of duty. You have to perform what you have been told to do. And this world runs on apparent knowledge and apparent causes. If Allah wanted, so why don't we just say this? If Allah wants to defeat his enemies, let him defeat them himself. Let Allah not even go through Badr and Uhud and Hunayn and Khaybar. Let Allah just do it himself. No, that's not the way it works. Because Quran says 47:4, had Allah wished, he could have taken vengeance upon them, but he wants that he may test some of you by means of others. So imams have to use the obvious and apparent means. If they were just to use their powers and finish off their enemies in the blink of an eye, it would not even be a sufficient test for them, nor for their followers. Even imams go through these tests. Second response to this second question. Think about it in this way. Imam alayhi salam is a role model for others in the spread and teaching of religion. If he, whenever he is faced by any difficulty, would just be able to use some kind of miraculous, non-apparent way of defeating his enemies and overcoming the difficulties, then how could he be a role model for others? How can he say to other people, fight, stand up for your rights, go through difficulty, even if you are killed, even if you have to undertake imprisonment, even if you have to go through calamities, even if you lose your house, still stand up for the truth. How can he say it? They'll say to him, but you yourself are not using these things. You yourself don't go through any difficulties. You yourself just click your fingers and everyone dies. So they have to be role models. And number three, final thing, at the end of the day, imams have a high position near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Imam Hussein alayhi salam doesn't go through all of those calamities and masa'ib of Karbala, then how would he claim this high position for himself? Why do we say Sayyidul Shuhada? Why do we say Safinatul Najat? Why do we say Misbahul Huda to Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Because he went through all of these difficulties and calamities. That's why his position is so great. So obviously they also have to devote themselves, and that is their honor to devote themselves for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and go through all of these things and show Allah how much they love him and receive his grace and reward. So this was our final session on this line, وَحَمَلَةِ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. And next time when we resume, probably after Mah Mubarak, we're going to do وَأَوْصِيَاءِ نَبِيِّ اللَّهِ. Many things I didn't mention today because time was too short. Now we will go to any questions. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any questions. So inshallah, we say iltimas dua and see you probably after the holy month of Ramadan. Please remember us in your prayers. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.